Welcome to Ant Ninja Talks. Today we are interviewing Galya Westler. I might have pronounced her name wrong. If not, you can correct me.
That's the correct way.
Awesome. She's given a TEDx talk in Vancouver on social media and how to use social media platforms. She's very inspiring. And today we're going to get into knowing who she is, her entrepreneur journey, and what we can learn as entrepreneurs who want to turn into entrepreneurs and see her mindset, her process, her decisions, and what we can learn from it. So let's get started. Galya, what's your background before we even get to know about the businesses you started?
So thank you very much for inviting me. It is a pleasure to meet all of you behind the camera. Hi. So my name is Galya Westler, and you pronounced it perfectly.
Awesome.
And I wonder why. Like, did you get some training from the Galya beforehand?
Not really.
No? You just knew it was Galya Westler.
Well, I hope so.
It is. It
Cool.
is. So my background is I was born in Montreal, and I was raised in Israel, and I moved back to Canada about almost 10 years ago. And at the beginning, I moved to Victoria, and then I moved to Vancouver. So I lived in Victoria for 2.5 years, and then I've been living in Vancouver for the past 8 plus years.
Awesome. So did you study in Victoria, or I know your background is in computer science. Can you tell us where exactly did you study from, and what transitioned you to come to Vancouver?
All right. So my background, if I were to start from the beginning, is that my mom and dad, they lived in Montreal. My dad did his PhD there. That's how he got to Concordia University. And then they decided that they wanted for us to have the best education. And so that's why they went back to Israel. So that's why I grew up there. And I studied there. So actually in Israel, if we were to backtrack at the age of 18, you have to go to the military. So it's both for women and for guys. And for girls, it's about 2 years. For guys, about 3 years. So I've done that. And then afterwards, you kind of decide, what am I going to do when I grow up? Well, most people, they get an education. So according to percentages that I've checked, a few years ago, I think over 50% of Israelis do go and get higher education. So it's very common, and it's very, very competitive there. And so I went and I got my higher education in Israel, and I studied in Tel Aviv, and I studied software engineering, which is 4 years versus computer science. And I worked there just a little bit. And then I was with a guy, and the guy was suggesting that I use my citizenship, and for him to use my citizenship through me, for us to move to Canada. So we moved to Victoria because he got confused and he thought that Vancouver Island is Vancouver. But Vancouver Island is not Vancouver. And when you talk about Vancouver, Vancouver is not Burnaby and it's not Coquitlam. Vancouver is just Vancouver. But for people that come from outside, Vancouver is everything, right?
Yeah.
So we ended up moving to Victoria, and things didn't work out. And then he moved back to Israel, and I stayed in Victoria. And then I said to myself, well, what a better way to change environments other than to move to the big city, which is Vancouver. And the way to move to a big city is, in my mind, there's two main reasons. You either move for love or you move for money. So since I had no love at that moment in time, I moved for money, which means that I got a contract in Vancouver. That's how I arrived here about eight years ago.
Awesome. So you moved here for money.
It sounds so bad now that you say it. I moved for an opportunity.
That's politically correct way of saying
Yeah.
it.
And you know what? Opportunity. It could be opportunity to love or to make money.
Fair enough. So you moved here for making for opportunities.
Yeah.
But you didn't work for too long because you started to start your own company very soon.
Yeah.
So how did you make that transition from being working as a contractor and then saying, okay, now I see more opportunities, and then I got to discard this and make the decision of starting your own company?
So I'm also a public speaker, as you mentioned, the TED Talk. And as a public speaker, I get invited to speak in different organizations and different events. And I got invited to speak at the Prestige University of Tel Aviv, at the other entrepreneurship program. They do a master's degree there. They've got a program. And I gave a talk called The 3 Paths of an Entrepreneur, which actually answers your question. So my path as an entrepreneur is a little bit different because I finished a graduate from university, and I worked in my career, in the corporate world. I worked maybe for about a year or so, even less than a year, maybe like a year and a half or so. And then I didn't quite get the glass ceiling yet, but I had a feeling I was going to. But it so happened that I had an opportunity to move to Vancouver for a contract. So I got a contract with Yellow Pages. It was a very big contract. And they said to me very simply, we'll pay you more if you were to incorporate, because they don't have to pay all the fees as an employee, right? So I said, oh, sure, no problem. I'll incorporate. And within 3 weeks, I moved to Vancouver. I've incorporated, and I started charging them like consulting fees. And that's to Galvanize, the company that I have as a consulting company. And then I thought to myself, well, if I have a corporation, and now I realize how many fees you have to pay as an incorporated company, which it's not always the right decision, then I might as well start different pet projects that I wanted to do. And even back then, I started doing different social media projects. So I created this social network called Get Friended, and it was with the purpose to connect people based on their hobbies and what they love to do. So you can say, I love to play guitar, and I can say, I don't know, I love to paint, and I can maybe do a painting for you. You can teach me how to play guitar. And then we meet, and then 3 things can happen. We can become like best friends. We can date if we're single, or we can have a business relationship. Like you can hire me, I can like paint stuff for you for monetary value. So that was like back then. And it all started really, it's just started by, almost by accident.
So this gives me an interesting point. So when you had the passion or the behaviors of starting things from scratch, because that's what entrepreneurship is all about. It's not like one fine morning I get up and I'm like, I don't like my job, and then I'm just going to start something. No, this has been going on for a while, that because you started making this social platform, and then as soon as Yellow Pages gave you a job, you transitioned and saying, okay, I'm going to be a consultant, which is now you're starting your own company, and then they're using that for your consultant. Then you transitioned and started to make another company, which is Plazus. How did you go from being a consultant and now working and starting this new company, which is an app developing social platform? Talk more about it, the transition, and what's the goal of this company.
Right, so I will just complete the background, and I will tell you that I started off as a consultant, but it was more or less like a full-time job. You just get way more money because you are in corporation and you can charge more, but they pay you basically per hour. And at the spare time, because I love to work, and coming from Israel, it is very, very competitive. So you work like 12, 13, 14 hours a day. You don't really have the work-life balance. I mean, you do. It's just different there. It's more high pace. So what I did is I just ended up working for that contract and for my own pet projects. And then I realized, oh, it's not very stable. Right? We all know it's not very stable to be an entrepreneur and even to be a consultant, because contracts ends and they don't need you anymore. You're the first one to go, especially when they pay you a lot. So then I was in a situation where I said to myself, okay, I need the stability. I'm going to find a full-time job. But let me tell you a little secret. There is no stability. There's no such thing. The stability might be in your head, but there's no such thing as stability, because when you work for someone else, you're basically dependent on a boss, and that boss may wake up one day on the wrong side of the bed, and he's going to say, oh, you know what? I'm paying you $120,000 a year. I don't like the fact that you just gave me, some sort of a challenge to deal with, because I'm the big boss and I get to tell you. So you've got all this like different politics, things that are happening within a workplace. So in my mind, because I see myself as a person that thinks really fast and act really fast, I went through this path of the career. So then I did take on that full-time job, and I worked for a really big American company, and I reached like this senior level, almost like executive level, being a product manager. So a product manager is a person that combines like project management skills, and they define the scope. They sit down with the clients, they do prototypes. But really what they do as a person that's in charge of projects, they put their hands in the gutter and they bring all the nasty things from the gutter and they place it on the executive table, and they say, this is what's wrong with the project. So guess what happens when you say this is what's wrong with the project? You either get axed or you hit a glass ceiling, because there's so many like different political things that are happening, right? So I've reached a point where I've reached this glass ceiling, and I said to myself, I can't continue doing this anymore. So what happened was I bounced back to being a consultant so that I can control who are my clients, plus being a very creative person. So you have to discover within yourself, am I the kind of person that wants to be working for somebody and like being told what to do, which a lot of people are, and they love their work-life balance. I want to go and like play tennis in the snow, which is okay, like that's great. You can have that if you want to have that stability, or you can decide that you're a very creative person and you can see that you're hitting the glass ceiling, and people are like, they're like overbearing you on your creativity, and they're not letting you do what you want to do. And then you can decide, you know what? I'm not going to make this boss of this company rich. I'm going to be rich myself. So the first step in my mind was to keep a job, a full-time job, and try and experiment outside. And that's one of the things that I talk about in one of my talks at the university, is that you shouldn't risk, especially like when you're on your own. Like I was on my own. I'm on my own for years. Like no financial back, no help from the parents, no nothing. You have to build everything yourself. You should take care of yourself. You should take care of your education. You should learn in the work environment how to work with colleagues, how to deal with that glass ceiling situations, and then decide for yourself, what is my creativity moment? What do I want to do as an entrepreneur? And how am I going to make money from that? So I went through a few stages, right? Like I tried on different projects. I failed because I didn't know how to monetize on it. And then I continued working for these companies. And then I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to take on consulting gigs. So I took on different projects. And then what happened is I started working on private social networks for different brands. And they wanted to connect their brand with their audience. So we ended up building like private social networks for them. And we would charge like tens of thousands of dollars. And then I saw as a product person, oh my gosh, redundancy in the requirements. Right? So if you think about it, when we build those social networks, they're always going to be the same. You're always going to have a wall. You're always going to have private messaging. You're always going to have profiles, allowing people to interact. And then this idea like sparked in my head, what if I automate it? And right about the same time that I kind of had this idea in my head, and I've already like developed these custom apps, I met one of my investors, and I was consulting for him in the past, so he knows my capabilities as a product person. I met him and he said, hey, Galya, what are you working on right now? I said, well, I'm consulting and I have like 3 ideas for a startup. He goes, oh, what is it? So I pitched him the Plazus idea, and he's like, that's the one. And I will invest and I'll bring my friend. I'm like, you will? Okay, cool. But he's like, but you gotta like ditch all your consulting clients, right?
Yeah.
Like you just have to be like full on Plazus.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, fine, let's do it. Let's see how much money can we raise. So we raised like a little bit, which is quite a lot for the Vancouver scene, because the Vancouver scene is like ridiculous. There's a whole bunch of like angel investors here, and I'm sure there's VCs and all these different levels, but it is so hard to squeeze money from an angel or from people that they're very, very, very conservative. So a word out to all you entrepreneurs, not sure there's something to look in the city of Vancouver, the area of Vancouver, because it's very conservative and it's very difficult. And you have to prove yourself like 10 times more if you were to maybe go to the US. I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet. But I'm pretty sure the world, there's different options in different places in the world for us to raise more money. So that's how we automated everything. And we created a platform called Plazus, which is a play on words, plaza and us. So what it is, it allows anybody that has a tribe to connect with their tribe. So right now, people connect with their tribe. So if I were to think about a business that has a tribe, so for example, your Toastmasters club, you meet every week, right? You need people to volunteer for different roles. You need to broadcast different news for them. During the meeting, do you take photos? Do you take videos? You do interactions, right? You give evaluations. So all these things are being placed on Facebook groups. They're being placed on email marketing. And the engagement level over there is extremely low. It's like maybe 6%, maybe 20%. So that's more or less the competition with Plazus, is that Plazus allows you to create an app that
engages the audience more.
Exactly. With the push notifications, we've seen numbers go up to 99% engagement.
So what I've seen as a common theme with most entrepreneurs is that they work for a full-time job. They reach this threshold where their mind is like, they reach a mind threshold of, I cannot take this anymore. Yeah. And then you eventually start to work on your own business, because that's when your brain actually becomes more creative, because because there's so much pain working for the company that anything better than that is going to satisfy you.
And it's actually a golden cage. Right?
Totally, yeah.
So the more you progress in your life and you start like either bearing kids, which I haven't done yet, or like you commit yourself to a husband or to a wife, and you have like family to take care of, the more you add these like
I know what you're saying,
things to your life, this commitments
Constraints.
in your life, the less you're going to be free to be an entrepreneur. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, I think you really have to experiment while having this full-time job, and then you just have to do it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do it, if you don't jump into the water and start swimming, you're never going to do it, because it's the golden cage, right?
And that's my next question. Most people, or rather everybody, they have a full-time job. They want to start a company. The transition from, should I quit my job? Should I work on my side project while I'm working? Because if you're working on your side project, then you may not be mentally focused because you're working 10 hours at work. And then going back home, you may not work on it at full capacity. And then you're like, should I quit my job because I'm not focusing on my side project? But I believe this idea, if I really work on it, can help me out. What advice would you give to someone who's in that transition state? They have an idea, they're still not tested with the market. There's no clue whether someone is actually going to use the app or the product, but they believe it's going to sell. And when we know it's like gambling if you just believe without actually having customers or having investors. But what advice would you give?
What you're asking me is the how and the what. So the
Yes.
what is like, what is it that they're going to build, and what are they going to build, right, to prove that concept. And the how is how they're going to transition. So in regards to the how, what I would say is that don't jeopardize your bread and butter right now, because if you're alone, if you don't have any financial back, you should take care of yourself. So do that, but maybe try and see if you can work for a company that doesn't require you to work. I mean, a lot of companies that I've seen in Vancouver, you don't work 10 hours.
I agree. Yeah.
It's like for startups, for sure, you work a lot of hours, but a lot of companies that I work for, like for example, the BC government, you work, in my experience, we've worked like 6, maybe
And then you can use
7 and a
that other
half
time.
hours, and then at 4 p.m., boom, my pencil dropped, right? So I didn't have to work beyond, which is awesome, because then you have time to do other stuff. Now, another way to approach it, if you do work for a company that requires a lot of hours, then you have to decide, like, is this something that I want to put all my effort into? Or maybe what I can do is I can maybe move on to a part-time, or maybe take on a contract. Now, I know it's difficult, but for technical people like myself, like you're a developer, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a developer and you can like start getting some clients and maybe get some service clients, so you can like service them and do a lot of work for them, maybe in a part-time, maybe 75% work capacity, then you can leave enough time for your startup. And I would say, like, you need to have a certain routine, and you need to be very, very dedicated. So even though you're working for someone else as a consultant, as a full-time, you have to allow for your baby to grow. And for your baby to grow, you have to dedicate like at least 2 hours in the morning, and maybe like during lunchtime, and maybe like it's a dedication, right? Like if it was that simple, nobody, I mean, everybody would succeed, right?
Totally.
So it does take a price, right? And you may end up, with not a lot of life,
Yeah.
but you may end up like building something that will be so rewarding at the end.
So now brings me to the next question. So let's talk about your new app. If I may ask, how many users do you have, and how do you monetize your app? Because we all know that most companies, that when they start, they think that the idea is great till they launch and no one is using it. Or it could be the other way around, where you have like this hype of, Facebook launched and they had like 3 million users using it on the day one. And we all know those overnight success is not quite, in reality, it doesn't work that way. What did you do for your app to get traction? What would be some steps that you could recommend anybody who's building something? What would they need to do so that they try to monetize it as quickly as
So
possible?
I'm going to start from the end, because I should have answered that when you first asked me. So this is the what. So
Yeah.
what is it that you want to bring? So if you know what is the product as an entrepreneur that you want to sell, then the best way to do it is you just start by sketching. So I love to sketch, but I'm a very bad designer. And although I studied software engineer, like I do not know how to code. I don't think even in university I knew how to code, but I'm amazing at convincing people to do things for me, sometimes for free, right? So if you have that skill, then what you can do is you can put a team together, like the way you guys are a team together, right? So you're all like shareholders of the same dream, and then you task them out. But as a visionary, so there needs to be a person or maybe a few people that are visionaries. You have to imagine your product. So if you want to build an app, if you want to build a website that has like different interviews with entrepreneurs, then if I was in your shoes, I would imagine how that website would look like. Well, how the user is going to interact within the website. Are they going to see like a carousel of different videos? Are you going to also post it on different social media channels? Like, you have to envision before it's built, how is it going to look and feel when you build it? And the way to do that is you just do a sketch. You build your own prototype. Maybe you can hire a designer, maybe you have a designer in your team. But the first thing that you do is you do brainstorming and you think, okay, what is the use cases? What is the prototype? And then you build it in the most ugliest form ever. Because you have to convince yourself and the people around you, these are the interactions, this is how I want it to be. And then when you have a little bit of money, invest in like a good UI UX person to make it beautiful and slick. So I'll give a little secret. All the apps, the custom apps that I've sold from the social networks, I actually sold them from the paper. I did not spend a dime on development. All I did is like sketches, and I made this like presentation and I just show it to them. Because I can just convince them, hey, this is the vision, because I have it in my head. So if it's in my head, it's easy to convince, right? It's there, it's live, I can feel it. I know how it's going to be. So I sold them from the paper. I sold like $50,000 app just by showing them the different interactions. And then I paid the UI UX designer. Then I make it slick. Then I sign the contract with them. Then they say, oh, yes, we want it. Oh, you want it? That's great. This is how much it's going to cost. Okay, now let's put developers on it. Now let's start developing it. And I did the same thing when I got the investment. But about investment, it's a little bit more tricky, right? Because investors it's really hard to get good investors, but I was very lucky to get a very supportive investors, and they just believed in me. And then, they gave us the investment funds, and then we could basically hire the developer. But you have to prove first to yourself, what is the prototype? How are you going to do it? And then when you have a prototype in hand, if you know who are your customers, like I knew who was my customer, I brought it to them and I say, hey, play with the prototype. Give me your feedback. And that actually reminds me that whomever wants to do like startup things should read Eric Rice.
Right,
Lean startup approach, because that's what he's talking about. He's talking about how can you like prototype something, do it very, very lean, do not spend any money, and just test it out with the audience, and then gather their feedback and then pivot. So you also have to be willing to pivot, right? And that's another really good thing. And then in regards to our platform, so we just launched like a few months ago, and honestly, I haven't had time to promote this too much. I mean, I've had like people interview me because of the TED. So we've gotten some traffic, like maybe a few thousands traffic into our website. And then we have 500 active users, which is like astonishing in my mind, because we have done like zero marketing. But I have a little trick. So do you remember Get Friended that I told you about? So with Get Friended, I try to be like the next Facebook, right? A lot of entrepreneurs, I want to be Mark. Well, guess what? You cannot be Mark Zuckerberg, right? And I'm not sure you want to be Mark Zuckerberg.
Fair enough.
And also the way he made his way for success. But if you think about what Mark Zuckerberg has done, he basically figured out the chicken and the egg. So you guys know what chicken and egg problem is?
Nope. Can you explain it? Yeah.
So if you build it, or when you build it, will they come? Well, guess what? I've built it and they didn't come. So I've built this like massive platform that allows anybody to tweet what is their hobbies, what are they looking for today, and what can they give in return, because I wanted to create interactions. But I couldn't figure out a way, how would I bring the traffic onto my beautiful website, and how will I get people to pay for the service? That was the two questions that I had to answer, and I didn't answer because I went from my gut feeling to say, I want to connect people online. So if you're trying to break the chicken and the egg, if you're trying to create this online ecosystem, you first have to figure out, how am I going to bring traffic into it? And when you bring traffic, you have to ask yourself, how am I going to monetize that traffic, right? And because I couldn't answer these two questions, I failed. I spent the money that I earned as a consultant, I reinvested in my company, into this pet project, and I failed. Because I would get, again, I got like a few hundred users, but I couldn't figure out a way to monetize on it. So I did get the traffic, I didn't get the monetization. And then years go by, and I do different social networks for different clients, right? And then I realized there's a way to break the chicken and the egg. The way you break the chicken and the egg is you start from the mini social networks. And if you want to transition now to the TED Talk, right? So when people watch the TED Talk that I did, which is about social media addiction, and how to overcome it, they will actually notice that there's an underlying message. Well, it's not underlined. There's a message there that says, if you want to live a life authentically, and you want to do something with a purpose, and if you don't want to feel isolated and alone, you need to connect with your community. You need to connect with your tribe. Now, I'm going to translate this into a monetization plan as an entrepreneur. I figured out a way that for me to create the next big social network, I have to create a movement to create mini social networks. And there's a massive movement because people of the world are saying Facebook sucks. Facebook is like the evil. Why is it evil? Not because of Facebook, right? Mark Zuckerberg has this amazing grand vision for himself, right? But what happened in the end? Is that people are posting about their sandwiches. They're posting about their like baby. I don't care about baby photos, right? Babies are cute. I don't need to see it right now, right? And if it's fine, if there was like if it was your baby, we'd be like, oh my gosh, I would love to see a photo of your baby, and then just like put it away, okay? But it has no purpose.
Yeah.
Completely. And then people, they post like these photos of their like beautiful, like I've got my fake lashes, which I didn't do for today, right? I'm all like beautiful. I'm so happy. I'm just amazing, right? But I'm not, right? And I give this,
yeah.
it's all like not real. And so that what happens is from a user perspective, from a person's perspective, you feel isolated, you feel disconnected, you feel quite the opposite than what you should feel. So in my TED Talk, I talk about how you can go from having this fake interactions with people into having a meaningful relationship. But the secret to that is you have to join groups that have the same interest as you. So I'll give you an example. I moved here like 9 years ago, right? Or 8 years ago to Vancouver. And I came here and I didn't know anybody. I didn't even have like a fork to eat with. Nothing. So what did I do? I went to Meetup, if Meetup was still there. And I went to a marketing event. And then I found a girl, her name is Hannah. And she said to me, oh, you should come to Toastmasters. I said, oh, what is Toastmasters? Does that mean like you're making a toast and putting butter on it? She's like, no, it's like public speaking. And I'm like, why should I need public speaking? And she said, well, you need it because if you speak to a group of people, you need to know how to like pose yourself, you need to know how to speak, how to use your body language, and it's going to be really good for your business, right? Even as a professional, not necessarily an entrepreneur. And so I went there and I was captivated by the table topics. So table topics, for those that are not Toastmasters, is you get a topic. So like you have to talk about microphone, 2 minutes. So you got to convince people about microphone for 2 minutes. And that's table topics. So I thought, wow, this is amazing. And that was my mutual interest group. When I joined Toastmasters, and then I'm going to talk about the structure of the group, is I figured out I have a common interest. We're all professionals. We all happen to be entrepreneurs, and we love to do public speaking. That is our core value. And around that, we have around 70 members right now, and we're the best club ever. We're going to move to our club. Come on. How many members do you have?
We have...
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So that is our mutual interest group, and through that group, I got what I intended to get from GetFriend. And I didn't date anyone from Toastmasters, but I could have found love there, and I found friendships there, and I found business there. I found business connections, and through all that, I got the education of Toastmasters, which is extremely valuable, right? So that is my mutual interest group. So to go back to my theme of the TED is that if you want to overcome loneliness, you have to join a tribe. Now, the underlying message of my TED, because during TED you're not supposed to promote yourself, is that, well, this girl, she talks about authentic relationship, right? She talks about tribes. Well, we created a platform that allows these tribes to connect. And that's what Plazus is.
Amazing. I mean, seriously amazing. So you basically you looked at Facebook, you saw that there's a problem at Facebook, and instead of competing with Facebook, you said, okay, let's make a platform that satisfies the pain of people using Facebook, and you came up with Plaza.
So monetization part to it is that it's a B2B solution. So, do you guys know who Dan Ariely is? He's like huge. The guy is like Einstein for this world. He's an economist and professor at MIT, I think. And he's done different TED Talks, and he's done a lot of research, and he basically investigates users' behaviors. and how to engage them from economical point of view. And I met him when I went to South by Southwest, which is an amazing conference you all should attend. It's in Austin, Texas.
What's the conference name?
SXSW, South by Southwest. They have interactive film and music. Yeah. And anyways, in that conference, all the big players go there, the Facebook, the Twitter. So he was giving a talk there. And then I met him in one of his in one of the presentations there. And we had a conversation back then. I was doing GetFriended. And he said to me, you have to find a way to engage the users. So I called him up like about a month or 2 months ago, and I said to him, hey, listen, I found a way to engage the users. I built this platform. And actually, it was just before the TED Talks. It was back in May when I did. And I said, I'm doing this TED Talk, and it's about removing isolation. And he said, you're trying to solve the world global problem of isolation. And that's a really difficult problem to solve because, you see, you can create any app that you want on Plazus. But because we have to show traction, we charge $99 a month if you have more than 50 users. And that sort of is better for businesses, which is why it's a business-to-business solution. And that was my angle, because my angle was, okay, don't use email marketing because that's 40%, right? Don't use Facebook groups. If you want to engage your brand, your business with your audience, you have to have your own app. But I do feel that if I could, I just want to bring this platform to anyone. So if you have a wedding, if you're doing a wedding and you have 500 participants and you want a private app for your wedding and you want to have private interactions, build an app. But it is meant for businesses though.
Interesting. So you pay. So it's actually $99 a month so that you can build up your own app to build a community where you actually will engage with that community.
That's right.
It's not going to be pretentious. It's going to be very authentic, and you're going to share the things that you want to share because that's what your app is all about.
And the way I see it is that there's two criterias for your app to be successful using Plazus. The one criteria is you have to have a tribe, because if you don't have a tribe, sure, you can use Facebook to try and gather your tribe. So you have to define what is your tribe. Is it your Toastmasters club? And it can be few tribes. Is it your wedding party? Is it a school? Is it a department at school? Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's another club. And once you have your tribe, you need to understand who are the influencers within your tribe. So what I'm telling you is it's one-on-one marketing that you would do anyways on the existing social network, but they have an opportunity to have these two conditions in their own ecosystem. So it's almost like having your own private Facebook outside of Facebook. So people that are inside your app, they don't get all the white noise that are coming from the other friend requests from Facebook or the other sandwich posts, lashes posts, the duck face. You don't get all that because originally you joined that tribe not because of the social app that it has, right? I joined Toastmasters because I really wanted to meet new people. And that's just a way for them to communicate.
Totally. So now I'm going to get to the next question. You talk about building traction. You talk about building tribe. I find a very similar approach in building a community. Most people struggle to get traffic. Any app you build is how do I get traffic? You seem to be mastering this art of getting traffic no matter what. For someone who's starting off, they made this app. They put it online. How do you get traffic? Is it through social? Is it my real question is the best way to build up your network? Is it one-on-one communication? Is it using Facebook, Twitter, all the social media platform? As you said, it's very pretentious. It's not. Yeah. It gives you a lot of rubbish. But when you want to build up a strong network of friends and community so that they can support you and they can be your first users using your application, how would you go about it? Do you meet a lot of people face to face, or is it something that you just organically because you gave a TED talk, now people will know you just because of that of TED talk itself? But if you don't have that leverage, then how would you go about it?
I would answer this by saying I don't see myself as an ordinary person. And I would refer to watch Seth Godin, he talks about how tribes connect. It's an amazing TED Talk from 2009. And basically, the way I would say it is that I don't care about traffic. I have, honestly, 3,000 views on my TED Talk, but I have not promoted it. I have a few thousands on LinkedIn, but I do not promote it. Everything is done. I have very few on Twitter. I just don't promote it there. And then Facebook, I don't think we even have like a Facebook page. I have like different ones for myself. But the way I grow and get the traffic is authentically and organically. So I'm not the expert in doing like outreach marketing. What I know is that when you have the tribe that you have, you can build them, you can bring them inside your app and then communicate with them. Now, what I would say about this marketing is that what you're describing is what everybody is trying to chase, right? We all want to have 500,000 followers on Facebook or Twitter, or we want to have like thousands of connections on LinkedIn and Instagram and all these social networks. But it means nothing, right?
Totally.
So it means nothing from a personal point of view. So when you watch my TED, you will notice that I'm saying a sentence that is, out of the 5,000 people in my connection, I can barely reach out to 5 people when I had, traumatic event happening in my life. And that is because from a personal perspective, it doesn't mean anything. And also from a scientific perspective, I talk about the Dunbar number. So Dunbar was this researcher guy, I think from the 50s, and he's done different experiments, and he found out that people cannot digest more than around 150 relationships. So even if you wanted to have millions of followers, and even if you had it in a personal level, it would mean nothing and it will be too overwhelming for you, which is why it is overwhelming, right? And if you look at companies the way they're built, every division in a company is not larger than 150 because of that Dunbar number. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to translate that into your marketing question. So if you wanted to succeed in your idea, we said you have to do a prototype. We said you have to go and reach your clients. So to reach your clients, you don't need thousands, right? You need to do some sort of an experiment, maybe bring some people, like I went to say focus group. You want to do a focus group, and focus group usually consists of maybe 10, 20, 30 people, depending how many people you have to digest the feedback that you're getting. So you're going to do this as a first step, and you're going to test your idea. Now, the way to launch your idea is I would challenge people to not think about the tools. Don't think about what everybody else is doing. Try to be an unordinary person and think, what is the purpose of my product? Who is it serving? So if it's serving, for example, an audience, I was just consulting to a woman, and she wants to build a social network for dancers, for the dancers community. And she wants to do it in a different way. So my advice to her is, what is the purpose? Who is your audience? And from this audience, who are the influencers in that audience? And that's, again, I'm not inventing anything. And this is just like from one-on-one marketing is, when you decide what is your product, who is it serving, from that audience, you need to decide, okay, who are your influencers? Who are the key people that have their tribe? And when they have their tribe, you have to tap into not millions of people. You might have to tap into just maybe 10, maybe 20. I don't know the number, depending on your reach, right? But before you even contact anyone, you need to make sure your product is good. It's usable. People love it. People need it. And when you know they need it, even before you build it, right? You go to the influencers and you convince the influencers, are they going to talk about your brand, right? Are they going to be able to, tell the world how amazing it is? And I can tell you that the way we got these users, we haven't built a lot of apps. I mean, we haven't had a lot of people actually building apps. It was just a few apps here and there, but they brought their audience. They brought their users with them. And that's how we got the reach.
Amazing.
So that goes back to the movement, right? So people have to join the movement. Big social networks, passe, right? You got to create like mini social networks, because think about it, like forums. Online. So EA Games, hello EA Games. I'm not gonna. I'm gonna use proper language here. I'm not a gamer, but as a person that understands the interactive world, I understand that there's a lot of movement around games. And what do you think EA Games does? They have forums. They have around 70,000 online communities interacting in forums. That is so lame.
Not really, but yeah.
It's lame. It's 1980s technology, right? Like, who has forums? But you know why they have forums? Because they have the need to break free from the big social interactions into smaller groups. So they have this innate need in them.
So you basically are talking about is how you can engage your customers even when they're not using your product. So for example, EA Sports, even though they're not playing the game, they can go to the forum and now they can engage. There's always an engagement criteria out there.
That's right. And they shouldn't have a forum. They should have an app. That's exactly my point.
You're like, that's old stuff.
High A game. Galya at Plazus.com.
That's not the best way of engaging. You got to have your own app. Amazing. So we're going to conclude this interview. Amazing talking to you. There was a lot of nuggets into how we can start a startup. How do you build prototypes? How do you market something even without building it? But I have two questions that I want to ask you. Number one, name 3 top books that you would recommend any entrepreneur or any book, not just entrepreneurs, that you believe that everybody should read.
So there's the first book by Yuval Harari, which is, I'm totally blanking out on the name of the book by Yuval Harari because I didn't come prepared.
That's all right.
I'm very sorry. But it is something about mankind. So something mankind. So Google Yuval Harari. And he talks about the evolution of, like, for example, the Dunbar number. It's a very interesting book to understand like how people think and how the human beings are interacting. And then the second book that I would recommend is by Seth Godin, which also has the TED Talk about tribes and how they connect. And then the third one, which is really important to understand the big picture of the Mark Zuckerberg of the world, is Hooked by Nir Eyal. And he talks about, and I talk about a little bit in the TED Talk, is that he talks about how Mark Zuckerberg and all the other social networks, they use very methodical way of engaging people into their platform. So back in the day, he would like notify you on new friend request, new message, new wall post, new la la la. So all these things create hooks in your brains. It creates positive affirmations. Oh, I'm beautiful. I have beautiful lashes. I'm like perfect, right? I'm 6 feet tall. And people are admiring me, so I better go and check in Facebook again because I have the cycle of the hooked effect. So these are 3 really important books to read, and also for people just to be aware of how their information is being used and how their time is being utilized online.
Awesome. And to end this interview, the last question is, who inspires you the most? Who inspires you the most?
That's a really interesting question. I will have to say that it is my mom and my dad. So my dad is almost like my business coach, and my mom is like my spiritual coach.
Perfect.
Yes.
It was nice talking to you. We have, again, Galya Westler. Thank you so much. You gave us a lot of information on how to start a startup. It's a brilliant interview. It was great talking to you. And thanks for coming over here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.